I used to pay women to leave after an hour. But Jennifer? I paid her just to stay and talk. She told me she needed fast money to save her mother, and I believed her. I offered her a way out, a home, even a job with my father. But the day I introduced her to him, both their faces froze. At 24, I had everything I thought a young man needed. A decent job, a sharp wardrobe, and just enough charm to get by without trying too hard. I wasn't rich, not yet, but I made enough to live well. I went to the gym, drove a decent car, and kept my fridge half full and my weekends wide open. And when it came to women, let's just say I didn't have a shortage of options. I wasn't looking for love. That's the first thing you should know. It's not that I hated relationships. I'd tried, once or twice. But every time, it turned into the same routine: jealousy, expectations, rules. The more someone tried to get close, the more I pulled away. I didn't want to be someone's emotional anchor. I wanted freedom, the kind that didn't come with guilt, flowers, or checking in. So I made a choice. I'd take what I needed, leave before it got messy, and keep my life clean. Some guys scroll dating apps. I had a different system. Direct, discreet, efficient. Call, agree, pay, leave. No emotional hangovers. No lies about feelings. No, where is this going? Just silence once the door closed, and that was exactly how I liked it. Until her. I didn't even remember how I found her listing. Probably the same way I found most. A few photos, a short bio, no drama, just a number. Her name was Jennifer. Or at least, that's what she called herself. Blonde, tall, blue-eyed, the kind of beauty that didn't need filters or fake angles. There was something striking about her photo. Not just the way she looked, but the way she held herself. Calm, still, like she wasn't trying to sell a fantasy. She just was one. I sent the message. She replied within minutes. We agreed on time, place, rate, nothing out of the ordinary. And yet, by the time I was setting up my apartment, dimming the lights, straightening a throw pillow for no reason, I felt nervous, genuinely nervous. Like this wasn't a transaction, but a date I actually cared about. It didn't make sense, but it was there, crawling under my skin. She arrived exactly on time. Tight jeans, simple top, no flashy makeup, no fake laugh. She looked even better than the photos. But what struck me most was how she looked at me. Not around, not at her phone, not past me, just at me. And for a second, I forgot what this was. Hey, she said softly. You okay? I blinked. Yeah, sorry. You just look. I wasn't expecting. She smiled. It's okay. Happens a lot. She sat down on the couch, crossed her legs, and waited. Any preferences? She asked. No emotion, just businesslike, but not cold. And I stood there, unsure what to say, because in that moment, with her sitting there, looking at me like I was just another appointment, I felt something I hadn't expected. Shame, not because I hired her. I never apologized for that. But because for the first time, I didn't want her for what I paid for. I know this is strange, I said, but can we just talk? She raised an eyebrow, genuinely caught off guard. Talk. I'll still pay for the time. Just, I don't know, stay. Hang out. I want to know who you are. She studied me for a moment, as if trying to detect some hidden agenda. Then she nodded slowly. Okay, she said. Your time. Your call. We talked for 5 hours. No sex. No flirting. Just real conversation. I learned her name really was Jennifer. She was 22. Dropped out of college to care for her mother, who'd been diagnosed with a serious heart condition. They didn't have insurance. The bills were insane. She tried waitressing, temp work. Nothing paid enough. Then someone mentioned this kind of work. I never planned to do it long, she said, eyes fixed on the rim of her tea mug. Just long enough to get the deposit for the surgery. How long have you been doing it? I asked. She hesitated. 2 weeks. Something in her voice told me that might not be true, but I didn't press. Not then. I looked at her, the stunning, vulnerable girl who wasn't pretending to be anything she wasn't, and I felt something shift inside me, something terrifying. I cared, not in some heroic, savior kind of way, not like in the movies, just real, simple. I wanted her to stop. I wanted her to be safe. And for some reason, I wanted her to be with me. When she stood to leave, I gave her the full amount, and then some. Don't go back tonight, I said. Take the night off. Please. She looked at the money, then at me, and tomorrow night? Tomorrow night, I said, I want to take you on a date. A real one. She stared at me like she couldn't tell if I was joking. I'm serious, I said. I don't care about your past. I'm not a saint either, but I want to try. Something real. She bit her lip. You know what I do, right? What I've done. I do, I said, and I want to see you tomorrow anyway. We picked a time, a place. She left, and I stood in the quiet, heart racing, wondering what the hell had just happened. She was supposed to be another night. Instead, she might be the first person I'd ever want to stay. The next day felt like it lasted a year. I checked my phone more than I'd care to admit. Not for messages, just to make sure the battery hadn't died. She hadn't canceled. She hadn't changed the time or the place. And yet, part of me was still sure she wouldn't show. Why would she? Why say yes to a guy who hired her? Why believe a stranger who suddenly wanted to play the hero? By the time evening came, I was standing outside the cafe we agreed on, palms sweating like I was 16. This wasn't me. I didn't get nervous. I didn't hope. But something about this girl had short-circuited my usual defenses. And then she walked in. Simple dress. Light makeup. Hair pulled back. She looked like someone I'd pass on the street and turn around for. Not because of what she was wearing, but because she looked present. Real. She saw me and smiled. Not forced. Not calculated. It was the kind of smile you give when you're not sure what's about to happen, but you've decided to show up anyway. Hey, she said. You waited long? Just got here. I lied. We sat, ordered, talked, and the weirdest thing happened. It felt easy. There were a few awkward moments. Sure, some silences, but they weren't heavy. They were just pauses between thoughts, like we were both learning how to breathe in sync. I wasn't sure you'd come, I said. Neither was I, she replied. Why did you? She shrugged, staring at her drink. Curiosity. Stupidity. I don't know. Maybe I just wanted to feel normal for once. You are normal, I said, maybe too quickly. She gave a small smile. You don't know me well enough to say that. Then let me. After dinner, we walked to the park nearby. The air had that early spring chill that made everything feel cleaner, like the city had taken a shower while we weren't looking. Street lights flickered through bare trees, and she wrapped her arms around herself. I took off my jacket and draped it over her shoulders without asking. She didn't say thank you. She just leaned a little closer. You really meant what you said last night? She asked softly. About helping me? I don't say things I don't mean. You barely know me. I know enough. She stopped walking. I've had clients say nice things before. Offer to rescue me. Give me gifts, apartments, promises. But it's always temporary. They want the illusion. They don't want the reality. I'm not them. She looked at me like she was still trying to figure that out. And what do you want? She asked. I didn't answer right away. Because the truth was, I didn't know. Not fully. But I knew I didn't want to watch her walk away. Not tonight. Not again. I want to give you something better than this, I said. I have a place. It's not huge, but it's yours if you want it. And my dad owns a cafe. One of his waitresses is going on maternity leave. He's looking for someone. I can talk to him. You wouldn't have to do that work anymore. She stared at me like I just offered her the keys to another planet. That's insane, she whispered. Maybe, but I'm serious. She sat down on a park bench and pulled my jacket tighter around her. Do you know what it's like, she said, to feel like every man just wants a piece of you? Like you're a vending machine for attention and comfort and pleasure. And no one cares who you are once they get what they came for. I didn't answer. Because no, I didn't know. Not really. She looked at me then, eyes glassy but unblinking. So when someone like you says stuff like this, part of me wants to believe it, but the other part keeps screaming that you're just another guy who'll disappear when I stop being exciting. I sat next to her. I'm not promising anything forever. I'm just offering you right now. Silence. Then, after what felt like a full minute, she nodded. I'll think about it. We didn't kiss that night. We didn't even hug. But when I dropped her off and watched her walk up the stairs to wherever she was staying, I knew something had shifted. And the next morning, I woke up to a message. I thought about it. Yes, let's try. We moved quickly after that. I cleared space in my apartment. She packed her things, not that she had many. A duffel bag, some toiletries, a box of books. That was it. Like she was always ready to leave, just waiting for someone to give her a direction worth walking toward. She slept in my bed, but we didn't touch. Not in that way. Not yet. It wasn't about control or discomfort. It was respect. I could feel her walls, thick and carefully built, but I didn't want to tear them down. I wanted her to feel safe enough to open them on her own. And for the first time in my life, I wanted time. A week passed. Then, too, we fell into a rhythm. Cooking, late-night movies, grocery runs where she made me try weird fruits I'd never heard of. She told me stories about her mom, about how smart she was, how she used to teach piano, how the illness had turned her into someone else entirely. I told her about my dad, about the cafe, about his loud laugh and terrible coffee. She smiled when I described it, like she could already see herself there. So I made the call, and my dad, good guy that he is, said yes without hesitation. Bring her by next week, he said. We'll get her trained up. Jennifer was thrilled. So was I. It felt like we were finally walking out of the shadow of what she used to be. If only I'd known what was waiting at the end of that path. There was this buzzing energy what happened that morning before we met. Something between the nervous excitement my father would look into her face. Jennifer realized he'd already seen it, fixing her hair for the third time. I could hear her humming a soft melody under her breath, the kind of sound people make when they're trying to distract themselves. You look great, I said from the hallway, leaning against the doorframe. She turned, biting her lip, adjusting the sleeves of her blouse. You sure? I don't want to seem like I'm trying too hard. You could show up in pajamas and still impress him. She gave a nervous laugh. That's easy for you to say. He's your dad. Exactly. And he's going to love you. I believe that. Or maybe I needed to believe that. Because today wasn't just a job interview. Today was her first real step out of the life she'd been trying to escape. And I wanted it to go perfectly. The cafe wasn't fancy, but it had charm. A corner spot with big front windows and a red awning faded by the sun. Inside smelled like toasted bread, dark roast coffee, and cinnamon. My dad had owned it for nearly 15 years, and it was one of those places where regulars had their names etched into mugs. As we walked to the front door, he looked up from behind the counter, wiping his hands on a towel. There he is, he called out. And this must be... He stopped. The towel dropped from his hand, and Jennifer stopped walking. For a moment, a long, frozen moment, the three of us just stood there. No one said anything. No one moved. And in that silence, I felt my stomach sink. Because something passed between them. Something heavy and sharp and undeniable. Recognition. My father was the first to recover. He blinked, forced a smile, and stepped around the counter with his hand extended. You must be Jennifer. I've heard a lot about you. She took his hand, but her face was pale. Her fingers trembled as they touched his. Nice to meet you, she said quietly. And that's all. No jokes, no warmth, just a handshake and an exit sign behind her that she kept glancing toward like she was drowning and looking for air. We sat in the back while my dad walked her through the basics, table numbers, register buttons, kitchen quirks. His voice was steady, casual even, but I could see the tension in his jaw. And I could feel Jennifer shrinking into herself more and more with each passing minute. When it was over, he handed her an apron. You can start next week, he said. If you want. She didn't answer, just nodded, barely. Thanks, I said. Really? Sure, he replied, and looked at Jennifer for a half second too long. She turned away. We stepped outside into the sunlight, and she exhaled like she'd been holding her breath the entire time. I can't work there, she said immediately. What? She shook her head. I can't. I'm sorry. Jennifer? No, she said sharply, eyes suddenly glossy. I can't. She started walking. Fast. I followed. Wait. Stop. Can you just tell me what that was? She didn't turn around. You already know. And I did. I knew. Not completely. Not in detail. But enough. My father had seen her before. Not here. Not at the cafe. Before. I caught up to her at the corner. She was breathing hard, eyes wild, arms wrapped tightly around herself. How long ago? I asked. She didn't answer. How long ago did you? 2 months, she said finally, barely above a whisper. I nodded, the street spinning slightly under my feet. You told me you'd only been doing it for 2 weeks. She wiped her cheek, furious at herself. I lied. Why? Because I didn't think you'd still want me if I told you the truth. The pain in her voice hurt more than her lie. I didn't speak for a long time. And then I said, Did you know it was him when we met? No, she said quickly. I swear, I never connected it. The night I met him, it was dark, quick, over. It didn't even feel real. But it was... Yes, she said. It was real and horrible, and I buried it. I didn't know he was your father. That night, I sat in my apartment with a whiskey in hand, staring at the ceiling. My father had betrayed my mother. Jennifer had lied to me. And somehow, I still didn't want to let go of either of them. I knew I needed to confront him. I just didn't know what I wanted to hear. The next day, I drove to the cafe alone. He was at the back, checking inventory. You want to tell me what happened? I asked, skipping pleasantries. He looked up slowly, sighed, and rubbed his face. Yeah, he said. I figured you'd come. I brought her to you. You knew who she was. You still shook her hand. He nodded, shame spreading across his features. It was once, 2 months ago. I was lost. I don't know. Your mom, and I haven't really been close for a while. I made a mistake. That's putting it lightly. I know. I'm not proud. I leaned against the wall, trying to stay upright under the weight of it. Do you still see her? I asked. No, he said immediately. It was one time. That's it. I believe him. I didn't know why, but I did. You know she lied to me about how long she worked. I said, yeah, he replied. And you know what? I probably deserved that lie. We were quiet for a while. Then he said, I won't tell your mom, and I won't tell anyone else. This stays here. And her? He looked me in the eye. She seemed like she really wanted out. She does. Then give her that. That night, I found Jennifer sitting on the floor in the living room, knees tucked to her chest. I talked to him. I said. She looked up slowly. I know everything now, and I'm not proud of any of it, but I still want you here. She blinked, not trusting what she was hearing. I don't care who you were before. I said, I care about who you are when you're with me. She broke, not in a dramatic way, not with sobs or scene, just tears, quiet and honest. And then she nodded. Okay, she whispered. Okay. For the next few days, we lived like people recovering from a crash. We didn't talk about that day. Not the moment she saw my father, not the conversation I had with him, and definitely not the past that now lived in the space between us like a quiet ghost. Jennifer stayed home. She cooked, read, cleaned up without being asked. She kept her hair up, wore soft clothes, barely touched her phone, like she was trying to shrink herself into something safe, something forgettable. And I let her, not because I wanted her to be smaller, but because I didn't know how to help her be whole again. I was still angry, still confused. But I also knew this. I didn't want her to leave. My father kept his distance. We didn't talk much, just brief texts about the cafe, the weather, the game on Sunday. He was doing his part, respecting the line. We both knew we'd made a silent deal. We wouldn't tell my mother. We wouldn't talk about what happened. We let this mistake dissolve into background, like spilled wine on a dark shirt, barely visible unless you look too closely. But it was there, always there. Jennifer never mentioned the job again. She didn't ask if my dad had said anything. Didn't ask if I forgave her for lying. Didn't ask what came next. She just existed beside me. Carefully, one night, while we were brushing our teeth in silence, I turned to her and said, "You don't have to walk on eggshells." She spit, rinsed, wiped her mouth, then leaned against the counter. "You sure?" she asked, eyes hollow. I nodded. "I don't want to mess this up," she said. "I finally have something worth keeping. So do I?" We didn't say anything more that night, but it was the first time she let her hand rest against mine under the covers and didn't pull away. We tried to build something normal. Grocery runs, movie nights. She started baking, not well, but with enthusiasm. I came home once to a smoking oven and a half-melted cheesecake that looked like a science experiment. She laughed until she cried, and for the first time in days, I saw her light up from the inside. We didn't have sex. That surprised even me. But it didn't feel right, not yet. I wasn't afraid of her past. I wasn't disgusted or ashamed. But I knew that for her, touch had meant transaction for too long. I didn't want to be another hand that took something. I wanted to be the first hand that asked permission. She started drawing again. I didn't even know she could draw until I saw her sketch pad one morning on the couch. Soft lines, quiet portraits, a face that looked suspiciously like mine, half hidden in shadow. "You're good," I said, flipping through pages. She blushed. "It's just for me. You ever think about doing something with it?" She shrugged. "Dreams cost money. Not all of them." She smiled, not like someone who believed me, but like someone who wanted to. One afternoon, while she was showering, I got a message from my dad. I've been thinking, I want to give her that job anyway. Somewhere else. Not the cafe. Quiet, under the radar. Part-time. No pressure. I stared at the message for a long time. He didn't owe her anything. He barely owed me anything, if we're being honest. But this, it felt like an attempt to balance the scale. I showed it to Jennifer later that night. She read it, reread it, then looked at me carefully. "You think I should say yes?" "I think you should do whatever feels right." She folded the phone in her hands, lips pressed tight. Then she nodded. "I'll meet him," she said, "but not alone." They met at a neutral cafe. Not his cafe, a quiet little spot by the water where no one knew them. I stayed for the first 5 minutes, long enough to make introductions, then stepped outside to give them space. She came out 20 minutes later. Silent, we walked to the car, and just before getting in, she said, "He apologized," looked me in the eye and said it. I don't know if I forgive him, but I appreciate that he tried. "You want the job?" She nodded. "It's just bookkeeping. Behind the scenes. No customers. I think I can handle that." The following Monday, she started. Something shifted after that. Not overnight, but gradually. She stood straighter, smiled more, slept deeper, started planning for weeks instead of just days. She began to believe, I think, that this life might actually be hers. Not something borrowed, not something bought. Hers. And I began to believe that maybe love isn't always about trust without question. Maybe it's about knowing the worst and choosing anyway. Maybe it's about the quiet peace that comes not from resolution, not because you forgot the past. Wake up because you're finally ready to build something that lasts. Dinner, sleep, repeat. That's what our life had become. A fragile balance built on quiet agreements and things left unsaid. Jennifer was doing well at her new job. She smiled more. She even joked sometimes. She was building something that resembled confidence, and I admired the hell out of her for it. But there's only so long you can build on silence before the cracks start to show. And one day, one stupid look ruined everything. It was a Sunday afternoon. My mother had invited us for lunch, a rare family thing she liked to do when she sensed we were drifting. Jennifer hesitated at first, but eventually agreed. My mom didn't know the whole story, only that Jennifer had had a rough past and was starting over, and somehow that was enough for her. She liked Jennifer, maybe even admired her. She said she had a calming presence, that she was polite, and she makes eye contact when she talks, which is rare these days. But my father, he stayed quiet. He smiled at all the right moments, passed a salad, refilled glasses, but he didn't speak directly to her once. Not in a mean way, just carefully, deliberately, as if words might trigger a landmine. And then it happened. Jennifer reached across the table to take a dish. My mother said something like, "Oh, you've got such graceful hands," and laughed. Jennifer blushed. My father looked up, and in that second, just a second, something flickered across his face. Guilt, recognition, regret, maybe all three. But I saw it, and Jennifer saw it, and the air in the room shifted. She didn't say anything. She didn't cry, but she pulled her hand back slowly and looked down at her plate. The rest of the meal passed in that kind of awful, smiling silence where everyone pretends not to feel the tension crawling along their spines. When we got back home, she went straight to the bedroom and shut the door. I stayed in the kitchen, staring at the wall like it owed me answers. It took me 2 days to say what I'd been holding in since that lunch. You looked at her like she was a ghost. I told my father over the phone, at that table, with Mom sitting right there. He didn't respond right away. "I know," he finally said. "It was stupid. I slipped. She saw it. You know that, right?" "I do." "You think we can keep doing this?" "Pretending." His voice lowered. "You think I don't feel it too? You shouldn't have come to lunch." She asked me to. I didn't want to lie to her. "You've been lying to her for months." "No," he said firmly. "I've been protecting her." "And so have you." That stung more than it should have. Because he was right. We were both liars now. Liars for the sake of peace. Jennifer didn't speak to me much for the next few days. She still stayed. Still cooked, worked, slept beside me. But something in her had pulled back. Not in anger, in pain. Quiet pain. The kind that doesn't ask questions because it already knows the answers. One night, I found her on the balcony, wrapped in a blanket, staring out at the dark street. "You okay?" I asked, even though I knew she wasn't. "I thought I could forget it," she said softly. "What happened?" "With him. With everything. I really believed I could just start over." "You have started over." She shook her head. "Not really. It's still there. He's still there. And now your mom is part of it, and she doesn't even know. She doesn't need to." Jennifer turned toward me. "And what if she finds out? What if this all comes crashing down?" "Then it does," I said, "but not because of you." She stared at me long and hard, and then asked the one question I hadn't prepared for. Would you still love me if she did? I didn't answer right away, because love isn't a switch. It's not a clean, easy, perfect thing. It's complicated, tiring, messy, and still, somehow, it's the one thing that keeps you standing when everything else feels like it's falling apart. So I told her the truth. "Yes," I said, "I would, even if it all burned down." She nodded, eyes glassy. "I just wanted one chapter of my life that didn't carry the last one inside it. Maybe this one doesn't have to end," I said. She didn't smile, but she leaned into me, and that was enough. That week, my father called, said he was thinking of telling my mother everything, that had been eating him alive. "I don't know what to do," he said. "You would think that
don't
after
do anything
like
yet.
that,
I told
everything
him,
would collapse.
not until you
But
know
it
why you're
didn't.
doing it.
Not all
For
at
her,
once, or
it just bent.
to get it off your chest.
Bent under the weight of what we all knew.
He didn't answer,
but refused
because he
to say
didn't know.
aloud.
And
My
maybe none of
father
you
didn't tell
did.
my mother.
Maybe we
Jennifer
were
didn't
all
leave.
just pretending we
And
knew
I didn't press
what
either of them
forgiveness
to
looked
make
like.
any grand
Maybe we were
gestures.
all just
No
waiting to
truth
see
bomb,
who blink
no family
first.
meeting.
Just more silence. But silence is heavy. And we were all carrying it now. Jennifer and I went through the motions. She worked part-time. She cooked. We went on walks. Talked about meaningless things. We were still us, technically, but the air felt different. Thicker. She was quieter. More distant in small, imperceptible ways. Her smiles didn't quite reach her eyes. Her laughter was delayed, like she was forcing herself to respond. And me? I was tired. Not of her, never of her, but of holding everything, holding what I knew, holding what I feared would explode if anyone slipped. Then one evening, we sat on the floor together, backs against the couch, watching some old movie we weren't really paying attention to. The room was dim, quiet but warm. She turned to me suddenly, no warning. "I hate that I lied to you," she said. I didn't move. "I hate that you felt like you had to." She looked away. "You made me feel safe, and I didn't want to ruin it by showing you who I used to be." I shook my head. "You don't owe me perfection, just honesty." She nodded. "I know that now." We sat in that stillness for a while. Then she asked, "And your father? You hate him?" That question sat differently. "I don't know," I admitted. Sometimes. Sometimes I want to punch him. Other times I just want to forget it ever happened." She didn't respond, but her hand found mine, and I knew what we were doing. The two of us, in that moment, we were making a decision, not to forgive, not to forget, but to keep going, even if it meant carrying the weight together. The next morning, I called my father. "Let's be clear about something," I said. "I'm listening." "We're not going to tell her. Not now. Not ever." A pause. "Okay," he said, "but that means it never happens again. With anyone, you don't get another screw-up. You don't get another silence." Another pause. Then, "You have my word." Weeks passed, and we got used to the lie. Jennifer and my mother even got closer. They baked together sometimes. She showed Jennifer old photo albums. They talked about music, childhood, little family stories I'd heard a dozen times. Jennifer played along like it didn't ache, like every compliment didn't remind her of what she was hiding. One day, my mom said, "She's good for you. She slows you down." And I smiled and said, "Yeah, she does." And I hated how right that felt. One night, Jennifer came to bed late. I was half asleep, the room dim. The window cracked open to let in cool night air. She slid in beside me and whispered, "I don't want this to be a life built on shame." "It's not," I said. She rested her head on my chest, then promised me something. Anything. That we never become like them. That if things ever get hard, we talk, even if it hurts. "I promise," I said, and I meant it, even if I wasn't sure I could keep it. We found a rhythm again, a quieter one, a bit more fragile, but real. She started saving money. Quietly, opened a separate bank account. Not because she didn't trust me, but because she wanted something that was hers. I understood. She began drawing again, but this time she started showing me. Faces, soft portraits, even a sketch of my mom. Smiling, her hands caught mid-motion in the kitchen. "You should sell these," I said once. "Maybe one day. Maybe soon." On our 6-month anniversary, we didn't go anywhere fancy. We stayed home, lit candles, played cards. She beat me at every hand. She wore the same soft white sweater she had the first night we really talked. I told her that. She smiled and said, "That was the night you saw me. Not just looked at me, but really saw me." "I still do," I said, "every day." She reached for my hand again. Same way she did that night on the couch. Only this time, it didn't feel like a plea. It felt like a promise. We never said the word forgiveness. Not to each other. Not to him. But we lived it, day by day. And maybe that was enough. Time didn't heal anything. It just made things quieter. The silence between what we knew and what we never spoke of turned into background noise, like the hum of an old refrigerator. You notice it first, then somehow you stop hearing it, until it rattles or buzzes at just the wrong moment. That's what living with the past feels like. It doesn't go away. It just stops shouting. Jennifer's job with my dad settled into routine. They didn't talk much. She handled bookkeeping, invoices, basic scheduling. No customer interaction. No late-night shifts. And no eye contact between them, unless it was absolutely necessary. He didn't push. She didn't provoke. And I stayed somewhere in between, pretend we could all just function like this. 3 people, 1 secret, and 100 ways it could still fall apart. At home, things were good, stable, That's not a word I used much before. Stability used to sound like boredom, like settling, like something people said when they gave up on passion. But with Jennifer, stability felt different. It meant coming home to the same person and still wanting to know how her day was. It meant eating leftovers on the couch and watching bad TV, but still laughing together. It meant feeling safe, not because nothing bad could happen, but because if it did, you wouldn't face it alone. She had routines now. She started drawing again more seriously. I bought her real supplies. She turned a corner of our apartment into a little studio. Just a desk, a lamp, and a quiet place to make something beautiful. She began selling her work online. Slowly, quietly, but it was a start. I'm not used to people paying me for things that aren't my body, she said once, only half joking. I didn't laugh. I'd pay a fortune just to sit and watch you draw, I replied. She smiled. Not the kind of smile that hides, the kind that opens. Sometimes when I'd wake up before her, I'd just watch her sleep, the soft rise and fall of her breathing, the way her hair spread across the pillow like ink and water. She looked peaceful, honest. It amazed me how someone with so much pain in her past could still look that serene. But I never forgot what she carried, and I knew neither of us could afford to pretend she hadn't lived a different life before this one. One afternoon, I came home and found her sitting on the floor, photo albums open around her, my mother's albums. Jennifer had borrowed them for reference, said she wanted to try sketching some of the old black and white photos. But when I stepped in, she didn't look like she was drawing. She looked like she was studying. I look at her, Jennifer said quietly, and I wonder how she'd look at me if she knew. I didn't say anything. I love her, she continued, not just for being your mom, but for how kind she is, how gentle. She never pries, never judges. I see who she is, and I think, how can I keep lying to her? It's not your lie, I said. She looked up. Isn't it? I walked over, knelt beside her, took her hands in mine. You are not your worst moment. You are not what happened 2 months before we met. You are not what someone else did in a moment of weakness. She blinked, fighting tears. But I'm still part of it. Yes, I said, and so am I, and so is he. But we're not letting that define who we become. She stared at me long and slow, then said, I want to tell her someday, when the time is right, not to confess, just to be clean. I didn't argue. I didn't promise her it would be safe. I just said, then when the time comes, I'll be right next to you. That night, for the first time since we met, she took my hand and led me to bed with no hesitation, no nerves, no fear, just trust and love that didn't need words. It wasn't just sex. It wasn't about proving anything. It was about presence, about finally being allowed to feel wanted, not for money, not for performance, but for being her. And afterward, as we lay in the dark, her head on my chest, she whispered, You're the first man I've ever made love to. Everyone before you, it was something else. I held her tighter, because there was nothing left to say. The next day, she mailed her first framed sketch to a buyer across the country. I watched her wrap it with such care, like she was sending a piece of herself into the world. She turned to me and said, I think I'm allowed to start dreaming again. You are, I said. You always were. We didn't mention my father anymore, not because we forgot, but because we were done letting his mistakes shape our story. It started as a thought, just a quiet, persistent one that wouldn't leave. I'd be watching her sketch or listen to her hum while cooking eggs on my old t-shirt or see how she crouched down to tie a child's shoe at the park. And I'd think, she's not just the one I want to wake up next to. She's the one I want to be buried beside. That's not something a 24-year-old guy admits easily, especially one who spent most of his life running from labels like boyfriend, partner, or, God forbid, husband. But with Jennifer, everything felt different, even permanence. It wasn't about making things official. We'd been living like a married couple for months. The routines, the loyalty, the quiet decisions made together. But something in me needed to show her what my words could never fully carry. That I didn't just accept her past. I wanted a future with her. And that future, to me, looked like a ring. I didn't go flashy. No mall diamonds. No giant gestures. I found a small vintage ring in a tucked-away jewelry shop. Simple, silver, a modest stone with a soft, green shimmer. The woman at the counter told me it was peridot, August's birthstone. Jennifer wasn't born in August, but green had always reminded me of her. Quiet, deep, alive. I kept the box in my jacket for 2 weeks, waiting, not for the perfect moment, just for the right one. It came on a rainy Tuesday. Nothing special about the day. No anniversary. No big milestone. We were just sitting at the kitchen table, eating leftover pasta. She had her feet curled up beneath her hair tied in a lazy knot. She was telling me about a customer who messaged her to commission a portrait of a dog, and he sent like 30 photos of this pug. She was saying, laughing, every angle, full profile. I think he wants me to draw a dog funeral portrait. I smiled, watched her hands move as she spoke, and thought, now, this is it. I stood up without saying a word, walked to the other room, came back with the box. She stopped mid-sentence when I placed it on the table between us. The smile on her face faded slowly, not into sadness, into something heavier, wary, guarded. "What is that?" she whispered. "Open it." She did. Her hands shook. She stared at the ring like it might vanish if she blinked, then looked up at me. "I don't know how to do this," she said. "You don't have to," I replied. "I have so much baggage, so much you didn't ask for. I know. I'm still figuring out who I am. I'll figure out with you." She swallowed hard. I've never dreamed about a wedding. I didn't think someone like me got to have that. I leaned across the table, took her hand. "You don't have to dream it," I said. "You just have to choose it. And I'm standing right here waiting." She didn't cry. She didn't say yes right away. She just stared at the ring for a long time, then slid it onto her finger and whispered, "Okay, let's do this." We didn't post anything on social media. Didn't tell my parents. Not yet. This moment was ours, and we held it like something sacred. Later that night, lying in bed, she whispered, "You're sure you don't want someone else? Someone easier?" I kissed her forehead. "I want you, the real you, not the cleaned-up version, not the one who performs strength or hides the bruises." She exhaled into the dark. "I want to believe you, then stay. I'm not going anywhere." The next morning, she told me she wanted to design our rings. Not buy them. Design them. She sketched out thin bands, silver understated, and said she wanted each one to carry a word on the inside. Just one. Something only we would know. "What would yours say?" she asked. "Still," I said. She raised an eyebrow. "Still here," I clarified. "Still choosing you. Still us." She nodded. "Hers," she said. "Will say enough?" Because she finally believed she was. We planned a small ceremony. No tuxedos. No distant relatives. Just us. 2 friends. A local officiant who agreed to marry us in a park where the trees formed an arch. We didn't talk about my father. Didn't invite him. We both knew the truth was still there under the surface. But this day wasn't about him. It wasn't about what he did or what she hid or what I had to swallow to keep us steady. It was about us. And we had earned it. The day we got married, the sky was overcast. Not dark. Not threatening rain. Just soft, like the world was wrapped in gauze. It felt right, like even the weather knew not to try too hard. Jennifer wore a light gray dress. No veil. No heels. Just a quiet beauty that didn't need to be announced. She tied her hair back with a ribbon and carried no flowers. I wore a shirt she once said made my eyes look kinder. We stood in the park, just under the trees, the wind tugging gently at our sleeves. 2 close friends stood beside us. The officiant spoke in a calm voice. And when it came time to exchange vows, we didn't read from paper. We just spoke, from where it hurt and from where it healed. She said, "I used to believe people like me didn't get love, only survival. But you reminded me that I'm not broken, just bruised, and that healing doesn't have to be quiet or perfect. It just has to be real. I choose you. In light, in shadow, in truth. I said, I never thought I'd be the kind of man who wanted forever, but you changed what forever looked like. You taught me that love isn't a rescue. It's a choice, one we make even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. I choose you. Again. Still. We slipped on the ring she designed. Simple bands, etched with hidden words no one else could see. Still. Enough. And just like that, it was done. No applause. No photos. Just a quiet moment we carried between us like flame cupped between palms. We didn't talk about my father that day. Not his absence. Not what it meant. We had made peace with that silence. Not because it was fair or easy, but because it was necessary. He had made a mistake. Jennifer had made a choice. And I had made a promise, to both of them, to keep the past locked away where it couldn't break anything else. A lie? Maybe. But a lie we had agreed on. And that made all the difference. My mother asked once, a week after the ceremony, why my father hadn't attended. I told her he wasn't feeling well. She nodded, unconvinced, but didn't press. Jennifer offered to write her a letter, not about what happened, but just to thank her for accepting her, for never judging. You don't owe her anything, I said. I know, she replied, but I want her to know that I see her, and I appreciate her, even if I can't tell her why. That was the thing about Jennifer now. She didn't pretend to be healed. She didn't act like everything was perfect. She just showed up, fully, honestly, bravely. We moved into a new apartment a month after the wedding. Nothing fancy. One extra room, a little balcony, better light. She set up her studio in the spare room. I bought us a second coffee mug rack because she insisted on aesthetic organization. We argued sometimes about little things. Dishes, dirty laundry, my tendency to forget appointments, her habit of stealing the blankets. But it never felt like the end of something, only the middle. Sometimes, in the late evenings, we'd lie in bed and talk about things we still hadn't said out loud. Not confessions, just thoughts. I wonder if I'd still be alive if I hadn't met you, she said once. Not in the dramatic sense, just emotionally. You saved yourself, I replied. I was just someone who opened a door. You didn't just open it, she whispered. You waited on the other side. My father called the week of our third month as husband and wife. He said he was proud of me, said he could see we were happy. He didn't mention the past, didn't ask for absolution. He knew he wouldn't get it. But he also knew we were still standing, and that had to be enough. And in the quiet that followed, Jennifer came to me with a new question. Would you ever want kids? She asked one morning, half buried under the blanket, eyes squinting against the sun. I blinked, caught off guard. I never thought about it seriously. I admitted, but maybe with you, yeah, maybe. She smiled into the pillow. Not a promise, but the beginning of another possibility. We built our life not on fairy tales or fresh starts, but on something more human, the willingness to stay, to keep choosing each other. Even when the past 3 years later, the floorboards, the past had stopped knocking. Forgive action, not because even it when words never came, but because we stopped answering. Jennifer still had days when she disappeared into her sketchbook for hours, eyes shadowed, hands moving like she was drawing ghosts. I still had days when I'd find myself staring too long at the coffee pot, remembering the look on my father's face when he saw her for the second time. But those moments came less often now, and when they did come, we didn't flinch. We just let them pass, because they didn't own us anymore. Our apartment became a home, not because we filled it with expensive things, but because we filled it with each other. The walls got messy. The fridge stayed full. She taped our first little art sale receipt next to the thermostat, like it was a family heirloom. She started selling more. Commissions came in from cities we'd never been to. People mailed her photos and poems and memories, and she turned them into something they could hold in their hands. It wasn't just art anymore. It was her way of giving people back pieces of themselves. On my birthday, she gave me a sketch she'd been hiding for months. It was of us, sitting at the table, same one from our old apartment. I was mid-laugh, leaning back, coffee in one hand. She was across from me, smiling without knowing, one hand resting on the table, like she was anchoring the whole scene. It wasn't perfect. My nose was a little off, her eyes too large, but it felt exactly like us. I drew it from memory, she said. The first morning I realized I loved you. I didn't say anything for a long time, just held it, like proof that all of it, the pain, the risk, the long silences, had been worth it. My father never brought up the past again. He and my mother stayed together. Whether it was love, habit, or some quiet agreement, I didn't know. I stopped wondering. Jennifer kept her distance. He respected that. Sometimes we'd meet for coffee, talk about sports, business. Nothing deep, but there was peace. A truce neither of us dared to break. We didn't rush the decision. But eventually, yes, we had a baby, a daughter. Her name is Lila. She has Jennifer's eyes in my mouth and a laugh that sounds like the first day of spring. The day she was born, Jennifer held her in shaking arms and whispered, "You'll never have to fight to be loved." And she meant it, every word. Watching Jennifer become a mother was like watching someone discover a superpower they never believed they could possess. She was patient, fierce, gentle in ways that didn't dull her edges. She never tried to pretend the past didn't exist, but she made damn sure it never touched our daughter. And as I stood over them, mother and child, light in both of their faces, I realized something I hadn't been able to admit for years. We didn't escape the mess. We didn't fix it. We didn't even clean it up all the way. We just made something out of it. Something new. Something ours. Sometimes I still wonder what might have happened if I'd never answered that message. If I'd paid her and gone through the motions. If I hadn't asked her to stay. But that version of me, he's gone. Buried beneath late-night feedings and Sunday walks and laughter that comes from a deeper place than I ever knew existed. The last thing I see before bed most nights is Jennifer's back rising and falling beside me, her hair messy, one hand curled toward mine even in sleep. And every time I think the same thing. She was just another night until she wasn't. And thank God for that.